Hello everyone, in this video I'd like to talk about game crafting mechanics. Skyrim has it, which none of the other Elder Scrolls games had, and although Fallout 4 had similar mechanics, this didn't exactly translate well into Bethesda's latest game, Starfield. Which I feel, at least for me, is part of, but I will underline here, not the whole of issues I had with the game. No, I'm not talking about settlement building because that definitely did follow into Starfield, but even that didn't work as well as it did in Fallout 4. And for me, despite liking Starfield, I definitely felt the crafting didn't quite measure up to the two previous single-player RPGs that Bethesda had created. So what I'm mostly referring to is Skyrim's interactive crafting system. Nearly everyone watching this will already know how the crafting system works, but to put it into perspective, I'll go over the basics of it. I made a video titled Why Skyrim is My Favorite Game back in January of 2023, and it didn't fully occur to me at the time what the exact game mechanics were that it had that really drew me into the game. At the time, I chalked it up to a beautiful looking world with waterfalls, snow-topped mountains, wildlife, and, people that go about their daily business. Well, truth be told, Oblivion also had that. But realistically, Morrowind would too if the line of sight went that far, though if it did in Morrowind, Red Mountain would dominate every point on Vardenfell. Even on Solstheim you could still see it, so not snow-capped but lava-capped I suppose. However, there was about the same level of interactivity game mechanics between Morrowind and Oblivion, and this also includes Fallout 3 while we're at it. So yes, the improved graphics, sound, environment, and behavior of the NPCs in Skyrim did serve to initially hook me in, but it wasn't what kept me there. It took some time for me to dissect exactly what it was that took hold of me, and it only occurred to me in the spring of 2025 just exactly what it was that elevated Skyrim to my favorite game since it launched in November of 2011, and why it's still in that top spot. So I'm by no means saying that interactivity mechanics are the sole reason for me liking Skyrim or Fallout 4, or the reason for the mess that Starfield got into. But game mechanic interactivity is a big part of what I like about Skyrim and Fallout 4. So to be specific, the interactivity that this video focuses on doesn't include the quests, stories, exploration, combat, enemies, companions, romance, story choices, skills or perks, and the setting, all of which are a core of RPGs. The interactivity that I am referring to is what you can start doing as soon as you get to the nearest settlement. In this case for Skyrim, the vast majority for everyone, it will be Riverwood, especially when they first play the game. The basic premise of this interactivity is the ability to take one resource gathered and create something with it that your character can use. So to be specific for Skyrim, hunting animals for their skins and mining ore as the starting point. With these, you can bring the skin to a tanning rack where you can create leather, and the ore to a smelter to forge ingots. Of course, you can buy, loot, or steal these items as well throughout the game world too. This also goes for the next level of items that you can create from these starting items such as leather and ingots. Regardless, all of it goes to one thing, being able to craft your equipment, both armor and weapons. Also, being able to take raw food and cook a meal with it. As well as other things like being able to make your own tent with the popular campfire mod by Chesco is something I don't think I've ever played Skyrim without. If you really get into the crafting, you typically won't just be able to get enough for your immediate needs, though you can choose to hold on to what you do have and wait until you are able to get enough. Whatever your path is, you aren't beholden to always start with raw skins and ore, but those two are the absolute starting point of the interactive crafting system for equipment. You can further enhance them with enchanting, and there you can even name your individual pieces of equipment, completely making it your own unique item. In the game world, you can of course come across that armor piece or weapon you were looking to craft yourself, or by surprise find out there's something even better than what you're wearing. It doesn't all have to be crafted, but with all of these items they can be taken an extra step and enhanced at a workbench or grindstone if you have the skills and materials. So you can take existing equipment and make it even better. When just starting out especially, your thief skills and gold will be quite low, and chances are you'll need to go and explore the land around Riverwood for those raw materials that you might need. I tend to forget the main quest for the moment, since my immediate goal is now to get a nice set of leather armor, a steel sword, or a better bow than the longbow you were given during the game's tutorial. The Anniversary Edition even has an improved set of light armor, the Scout Armor, which is one step above leather armor the game had before, making it the equivalent of elven armor, though it is cheaper and heavier. But this was one of the first things I did once getting to Riverwood, which was to search for enough skins or leather to be able to craft this set in my Let's Roleplay of Skyrim. Doing so encourages exploration and provides the player with a set of attainable equipment for their character and greatly adds to the feeling of progression. There are different levels of ore to encounter as the game continues, well beyond iron, culminating in Dragonbone and Dragon Scale, as well as Stalrim, both of which come from other sources outside of mining ore veins. From leather you can craft leather strips, which alongside with leather are a common requirement for armor, even late game armor. What always had me was getting to Riverwood, crafting my armor and weapons. This kind of game mechanic, where it's not that hard finding the materials to make something to improve your character, so long as you are willing to spend a little time doing so, are a great way of initially hooking you into the game. At least it worked for me. Furthermore, as a whole in Skyrim, this level of interactivity enhances player engagement and immersion by giving players control and responsibility over the game's progression. Crafting and adding enchanting on top of that allow you to feel directly responsible for your character's development and success, deepening your connection to your character and game world. At its highest point, with properly enchanted equipment and alchemical potions, you can craft gear so much better than anything else in the game, especially with the highest perk in enchanting, which is being able to add 2 effects to one item. The previous 2 games, Morrowind and Oblivion, only really had alchemy and enchanting for player crafting, and though these mechanics were good, they were quite limited compared to what was in Skyrim, where they included them and added in so much more. The addition of cooking food in Skyrim was also a nice bonus. I just wish that you can make more powerful food that is really worth bringing with you. However, with survival mode, cooking food with fire salts will create a meal that will warm you up when you're cold, and some of the food, like horker stew or venison stew, add health or stamina regeneration for 5 minutes. Making it useful in combat, even though that is about the limit of it, it's nice that it both heals you and feeds your hunger if you are in survival mode. Also, I should say, with the addition of the Hearthfire DLC, being able to craft your own home step by step, and create additions to it, which becomes a choice of 1 out of 3 for 3 parts of your home, was also a fantastic step in crafting. It's not really a skill to do all of this, but it just takes time to do it. Tailoring your home to your exact liking with everything inside of it was just unparalleled in gaming up to that time, and I still like it over what was in Fallout 4 and Starfield for player-made homes. So Fallout 4 had a lot of these crafting mechanics brought over to it from Skyrim, though of course because Fallout and Skyrim are so different, they had to conform to the existing world of Fallout. Guns, armor, melee weapons are all now fully customizable. However, unlike Skyrim, you cannot craft them from basic raw materials such as leather or metal ingots. You can only take existing equipment you find out in the world and then change it to how you would like it to be. However, despite needing the right amount of components and perks this time, you can modify the type of weapon or armor to your liking. Want to be a sniper? Change that rifle to have a long scope and long barrel to be able to hit at improved ranges, though the trade-off is usually less rate of fire and magazine size. Want to make power armor stealthy? Well, you can do that too by modifying it to improve its sneaking. Want armor to protect you from a certain type of damage, such as radiation? You can do that too. Though with all of these choices, there are trade-offs such as what specialization normally does to all things, just like in the real world. Food and chems are all craftable as well from basic ingredients and components. Power armor from Fallout now became this large protective outer shell, like a walking tank that you stepped into with all of your existing equipment on. And yes, thankfully power armor became fully customizable down to paint color and decals, which I think Fallout 4 nailed perfectly. Having a jetpack on allowed me to get to higher places, which was something I'd never done before my Let's Roleplay of Fallout 4, but since then, I wonder how I ever played without it. Settlement building also became a big part of the game, which sort of took the home building from Skyrim's Hearthfire and expanded it. I think being able to build your settlement is great, and I spent a fair amount of time with it. The real problem was the sheer amount of it that the game tried to thrust upon you, with a total of 37 settlements if you include all the DLC. Oftentimes they were included with the Minutemen quests, making some people really come to despise Preston Garvey, the quest giver, just because of it. The tedium of not just creating settlements all over the map, but getting the raw materials for it could be a real pain. Thankfully, you could, with the right perk, assign a mule to carry all stored junk from one settlement to the next. In the game, this is called a provisioner. It's limited by the number of people in your settlement, and if you wanted to change a line from one settlement to the next, you had to go and intercept the current provisioner and reassign them, which wasn't always an easy thing to do since they traveled back and forth on the map, and I ended up just by luck running into them when I happened to be home or by being patient until they got back. Mods and Creation Club DLC allow you to create some much more clean and modern looking places to live, instead of the bare minimum cobbled together housing, walls and roofs with holes and rust everywhere. I think settlements are a great idea, but just need to be toned down in the game. I can imagine if there were only 10 settlements you can work on, and maybe a couple of them were part of quests. That would have been the ideal number. Sometimes less of a good thing is better. In Fallout 4, I always become the ultimate scavenger, never going anywhere without looking for materials I could bring back to my home base to add to existing stock, in order to modify my or my companions' equipment, or just to add in something new to my settlement. When encumbered with junk, I'd use my companions to offload everything they could carry, and when we were all full, I knew it was time to return home to drop it all off. Okay, so now with that all being said, in every case here from Skyrim and Fallout 4, the items required to get everything if you explore or become a resource or junk scavenger are a fairly easy thing to do, and it's typically not that hard to find everything you need. The items needed to turn into components are neither too heavy or complex to get the skills and perks required, if you devote a chunk of the game towards it. It just becomes a natural way of playing both games if you incorporate this mentality into your gameplay. Though I have to admit, most RPGs don't have this level of crafting and instead might have a very minor amount you can actually craft, such as just potions and elixirs in Baldur's Gate 3, or enhancing your equipment by finding rare materials to bring to a smith or armorer in Dragon's Dogma. You can look ahead on each upgrade for your weapon or armor to see what skill you will need in Fallout 4, or just go to have a peek at the perk tree in Skyrim to see what you need to do along each step of the way. Want to make orcish armor or weapons? Get your smithing skill up to 50, and with your next perk choice, choose orcish smithing. So what I'm really saying here, if you dedicate time, effort, and put in the right perks, you can do all the crafting in the game you could want with limited setbacks, other than holding out for some more rare items you might need. How this didn't translate the same to Starfield, which left me a bit frustrated, was two issues. The carry weight of the crafting components seemed to have at least doubled or tripled in some cases, and then you have the issue of limited items you can buy in local stores, say for example New Atlantis. The crafting system was made to tie into outpost building to get all of the resources you could want. Outposts are the new settlements in Starfield. Though in this case, building outposts were optional and barely tied into anything important in the game. For me, when I did try to flesh out an outpost, it felt overly cumbersome and time-consuming for the smallest thing you could want to do. Want to create furniture? Well, did you bring enough of X components with you? Because now everything is much heavier and there is no central place to draw upon like it was in Fallout 4. Yes, you can construct storage containers at your outposts, but all this does is transfer items from the cargo hold on your ship to that container if your ship is parked nearby. You still have to manually pick it all up to use in your crafting for your outpost. This created a feeling, at least for me, of frustration, since now, with the heavier items, it was less practical to go get them all, and even when you do, there are extra steps to store and move them all compared to Fallout 4. Worse, there were no ways to see what you needed for components until you attempt to start crafting them at the outpost. If your ship's cargo hold was like the storage settlements in Fallout 4, where it was unlimited, this might be more practical, but your ships have only a limited amount of cargo hold space as well, and depending on how you constructed your ship, it could be a fair bit, but even then, it just wasn't enough for all the items you could scavenge in the game, which always gave me a feeling of limitation whenever I tried to store items for use later on. This wasn't an issue in Skyrim or Fallout 4, unless you went crazy. Though I believe the Lodge, which is the central main quest hub in Starfield, is where you can store an unlimited number of items, or in an outpost storage container, you still have to manually transfer them back and forth, which would just be way too much effort. For me, because outposts seemed like just tedium with little reward, and worse, you had to choose skills when leveling up for your outposts, I really never got into them. Personally, I think that they should have made a series of fun quests involving 1 or 2 settlements that directly involve rewarding you, the player, with access to more resources or experience to get more skills, all of which could have really helped here. Yes, I chose a bunch of crafting skills to improve my weapons and spacesuits, but the frustrating thing I kept encountering was that I needed certain components, which to have a lot of required so much carry weight that it was impractical to just hoard them all for when you might need them. Meaning, to upgrade equipment, I kept having to run back to the stores, and where oftentimes they had a limited amount of what I was looking for, or they just didn't have it at the moment. Even worse than that, there was no easy way to keep both track of what you needed and had. There is a tracking option, yes, however it doesn't work as well as I wish it would. To use it, you click on it, but with limited carry weight and storage, you don't know how many you need exactly. So looting or buying up everything you assigned a tracking marker to becomes impractical. The tracker highlights aluminum, but how much will I need for my next mod? What do I need, 10 or 50? You had no idea. Oftentimes, even though the total amount of different components in the game so far is slightly less than what it is in Fallout 4, it was simple and easy to remember there in Fallout 4 because it came down to just a few components you have to keep an eye out for, such as adhesives or aluminum for your power armor. In Starfield, they added extra complexity to the equipment crafting system because now you may need a crafted component through an industrial workbench to add to your laser gun and not just raw materials, which are called resources. It means there is now an extra layer of both skills to level up and choose, and now another crafting layer in order to upgrade your equipment. Oftentimes these components are quite heavy and even more impractical to carry around than resources. They require a different bench, different skills, and different resources to create, all added on top of the normal basic resources needed in upgrading. All of which at times frustrated me. I began writing down in a notepad what materials, or crafted materials, components, how much I needed, and even went online to look up where they're sold, as not all of it is sold in one place, but it is often spread out among different stores on different worlds. So if you watch me attempt to upgrade my equipment, you'd be seeing me travel to stores and back, fast traveling, to upgrade this one particular part of a weapon, only to find out the next upgradable part of the same weapon requires other raw materials or components that I neither have, and oftentimes the stores didn't have either due to a slight randomization of what they have for sale. These frustrating extra steps could easily have been simplified with a unified source of getting and storing these things. My thoughts about this was that some sort of in-game online store that you could order from could really help, especially later on in the game. With all the wealth you get, even if they charge you double or triple for the resources and components, it really would be worth it. I'd even be up for waiting an in-game day to get them, so long as I don't have to literally hunt these crafting materials down by traveling from planet to planet. Hey, we have Amazon in real life, and I ordered new computer components last night, and it's coming today. Why can't they do that in Starfield? Imagine being in the middle of creating your outpost, seeing you need a whole bunch of X resources of which you don't have, and then go into the in-game online store and order it. A ship comes to land at your outpost a few in-game hours later and drops it off for you, and then you're good to go. Also, as far as I'm concerned, your ship ideally should be the central hub of the game. I believe you should be able to store everything there that you could want, or at the least the game should greatly increase cargo hold space. In ships, or make the crafting items weigh a lot less, half or just 1/3 of what it originally was. My experience with the Starfield crafting system left me feeling that it was a lot more discouraging than it was in Skyrim and Fallout 4 due to weight, storage, availability, and knowing how much I'll need to get due to limited weight were the prime factors, all of which could and should be redesigned to make it more accessible. I'm fine with getting new skills to be able to upgrade equipment, but the lack of available resources and components, much of it due to weight, was the worst of it. Meaning, if you see 30 aluminum in the store and buy it ahead of time, knowing you'll need it at some point in the future, you'll only run out of carry weight on yourself and on your ship pretty fast. So in this case, preparing for something you might need isn't the way to play, which is the opposite of my experience with Fallout 4, where I took and stored absolutely everything in my home because I knew that they would be needed in the future. No such game mechanic is there for this in Starfield. The heavier weight of the resources and components are an issue. In Fallout 4, adhesives, at least for how I play, are one of the number one components I look for much of the game, and due to their 0.1 weight, I could carry 50 of them no problem. In Starfield, 20 adaptive frames would cripple me. Yes, you can, with one of the latest game versions, increase your carry weight, which also reduces your intake of XP, which, though helpful, doesn't deal with the primary weight issue, because eventually you'll still run out of weight to carry it all, when ideally your ship should be able to store it all for you, all of which you could ever need. Now you need to take your ship to one of the outposts, unload it all to a storage container, or worse, take it all to the lodge on New Atlantis to offload it, which could mean many tedious back and forth trips. The requirements for upgrading or crafting new equipment in Skyrim are quite simple in comparison to both Fallout 4 and Starfield, but at least in Fallout 4, you have a storage place with endless room, of which you do not in Starfield. And who wants to add an experience penalty to your game in Starfield just to carry more items? My experience with Starfield showed me that by the end of the game, I really was only to be able to get 1/3 of the skills I would have chosen if I got to choose everything I wanted. So limited experience versus carrying more, well, I would go with normal experience and a more frustrating storage mechanic to deal with. Yes, you can get skills to carry more weight, and for your ship to carry more, and I do go for those. However, as I said, it's still not enough. To get to that point, you'd have to most likely go through a major part of the game, which means if you focus on those skills early, you could be missing out on other skills needed, which could cripple your experience. I like complexity, but I don't like frustration. I really don't mind that there is research through a research lab in Starfield now, and I actually think that's an interesting new mechanic, and I'm all for it. But my issue isn't that Starfield's crafting mechanics are too complex, not at all. My issue is that it's too cumbersome. There should be an easier way to do it. As I said, carry and storage weight has a lot to do with it, but it's also the availability of these items at stores without having to go into the wilderness of various random worlds, of which there are 1,000 of them in-game, in the hopes of getting more of these resources. Want to bottleneck equipment upgrades due to skills you don't yet have? Or research you haven't the resources or components to fulfill? Sure, fine, I actually appreciate that. In fact, I see it as an improvement. But just don't make it a real pain to get those resources as it currently is. As I said, I'd rather deal with carry weight and storage issues over losing experience to carry more, since in Starfield experience is very valuable due to the sheer number of skills in the game, and how hard it is to get everything you would want. See, unlike previous Bethesda games, you cannot be everything you want to be. In the Elder Scrolls games like Skyrim, you can snag every skill tree and perk you want for your character, if you play through the game long enough. The same isn't the case for Starfield, unless they add in several more long game expansions, so what skills you do end up choosing is quite valuable. So as you can see, it's not just an issue of, I just can't carry enough. It goes much deeper than that. If you really want to get down to it, maybe even weight might not be the factor that Bethesda should tackle for Starfield crafting mechanics. If you get raw resources, maybe there should be a secondary refining requirement, sort of like how you take ore and turn it into ingots in Skyrim. But if, say, you manage to mine a piece of silver, allow that to turn into 10 silver ingots or bars to use for crafting, this could be a major solution to the issue I see with Starfield's crafting mechanics. Make the smelter worth using again, like in Skyrim, and have the big vendors like the UC Distribution Center sell refined metals in bulk, like 50 each. Maybe even increase the weight of the raw resource, but just allow what you can refine from it to be much more. And for the life of me, please allow cargo hold space on your ship to be much more than what it currently is, even with skills that increase it. So double the weight of a piece of ore, but allow the player to get through refining 5 times what they would have gotten before from the same weight. It makes perfect sense to me. Also stores, and I'm not talking about mom and pop stores out in the galaxy, but the big shops like the UC Distribution Center on New Atlantis should logically carry every resource you could need, all at once, instead of having to wait for the 48 hours for its content to refresh with a random type and amount. This pretty much goes for all the stores in the game. However, as an addition to the crafting mechanics in Fallout 4, Bethesda decided that outposts are also a means of gathering resources, and they want players to set up several of these outposts on different worlds to extract resources. You see, on planets outside of settlements, there are two types of resources. One you can mine yourself, and immediately put into your inventory, what you take, and sections of the planet that you can set up mining extractors to, over time, take in resources until its storage is full. It's actually a great idea, and going this route will require several skills, time, and resources to set up these outposts. However, the payoff, well, in my experience, is just not exactly worth it for Starfield. If you are really hurting for money, you can get contracts to deliver, say, 5,000 units of lead to a corporation, which would sort of lead you into a mining and transport type business. Actually, I like that idea. However, credits in the game aren't that difficult to get, and these contracts aren't exactly super lucrative, which provides little incentive to go this route. It's interesting that it's in the game, but why would I spend so much time trying to do this when I can just get a mission terminal contract or two for the same amount or more credits and get it over within just a few minutes, as opposed to spending hours creating outposts? How about a series of quests tied to factions to push a story, even a minor one? This would help incentivize people to go the outpost building route, and that would make it much more worth players' time and effort credit-wise. It just seems to me that Bethesda has in their hands great ideas for Starfield, but when it comes to much of it, it was just all poorly executed, and the crafting system was definitely harmed because of it. I didn't want to create this video just to bash on Starfield, but rather to point out where Bethesda went wrong and ideas for fixing it, which I do hope would be incorporated into Starfield, of course, but if not, into future Bethesda games such as The Elder Scrolls 6. So what I'm saying here could really help. There you have it. Skyrim and Fallout 4 hooked me with crafting that felt rewarding, while Starfield's system left me frustrated, weighed down by heavy resources and empty stores. Bethesda's got the bones of something great here: outposts, research labs, a galaxy to explore, but it just needs polish, a lot of it. A galactic trade network, better ship storage, refining ore, or just a stocked UC distribution center could turn it around. I'd love to see crafting shine like it used to. What do you think? Did Starfield's crafting click for you, or are you as frustrated as I am? Drop your thoughts below and let's keep this conversation going.